I'm Graham Dixon.
Rebecca Brummet.
Thank you, Brummet. Sorry. We're here in Trench 11. It's the 10th of July, and we're in the end of the fifth week. It's Friday, end of the fifth week of the season. So yeah, we're here in Trench 11. Last time we spoke, we had our sandy bank up at the top here. We had a transitional layer. We're just coming down onto the peat. I think maybe some of these timbers were showing up. Have a talk about those. We're just going to have a little chat about the sandy bank and how it's sort of evolved since we last talked on film. So Becky, you want to start us off?
Okay. Our sandy bank is 11003. It lies above a sandy transitional layer of sandy clayish sand, 11006. And we've noticed just recently that this tends to be a lot more fine sand, and then as we move over here, it's become more coarse. We just discovered that today, so we'll be adjusting our interpretations because of that. And it looks like it runs from the sandy transitional clay layer, 11006, down to the sand, 11003. And then if you can see down here, we have this woody peat that runs underneath of it, which is very interesting and exciting. So,
Which way is it, Becky? Just adjust the camera to what you're pointing at. So the stick's for tilt, and then the thing in your right hand's for pan.
Can you just check that?
Sure.
I'm not getting clear.
Sure.
Let's get it okay.
That's good.
all right. So we have the wood running underneath of 11003, the sandy layer. So it looks like this was a deposit before the timber or after the timber. So we're trying to figure out what the relationship is between the two. And then over here we have this sandy section, more clayish sand transitional layer that we found a few stake holes in, which we've marked. And this is actually underneath of 11003, our sand layer, but it's on top of our timber layer. So we'll be trying to figure out what the relationship is there as well.
The coarse sand?
And
It's also on top of that.
yes, and the coarse sand also lies on top of this.
The coarse sand's going underneath it.
Oh yeah, sorry. The coarse sand runs under this layer,
There's too many types of sand.
11007, and this 11007 sits on top of 11003, causing even more confusing, or more confusion.
3 is on top of grey, which is on top
3 is on 7,
top of the coarse.
which is
Yeah. Fine sand, grey clay sand, and then coarse yellow sand. So we were working on the assumption we just had 2 different deposits of sand. Now it looks like there's 3. There's probably going to be more, just layers and layers of sand. Each layer is relatively well sorted. It's all of the same sort of grain of sand. The stuff at the top is all very fine. The stuff at the bottom is all very coarse. We've already had this discussion with Richard Tipping about the sand being human deposited, not a natural event, not a flood. With these layers of pretty well sorted but noticeably different sands, I guess it kind of it encourages the idea that it has just been dumped on top of each other. These are separate events where it's gone in. We're going to take a microstrat sample of this to see if there are any other, see what sort of smaller depositional events have occurred in the build-up, and that's going to help us work out for definite, one way or the other, whether it's actually been deposited by humans or it's a natural event. So if it's all gone in at once, it's going to kind of imply that it's just a one-off dump event, as opposed to a continued build-up. So that's what we're going to work on this afternoon. We're going to get Mr. Gardner over here to come and have a play with us. You mentioned the stake holes in the grey. So those are intruding feet features into that grey, clayish sand. I've got a feeling that more are going to show up underneath the yellow sand as well. So we're going to be excavating those intrusive features at the same time as we peel this back. Hopefully we'll reveal some more. Hopefully we'll find something which we never know. Some of these timbers might have come from these holes. So hopefully that's something we're going to find. We're now looking at the timbers that have been showing up in the peat. We had planned obviously to take this trench down quite deep, get down some of the bottom layers of timbers, but we were finding bits of wood that we weren't expecting to find this high up in our sequence. Some pretty large pieces and some possibly worked pieces. So some of these have been individually recorded with timber numbers. I'm going to just point out a few to you. We'll start with one, I suppose. We'll work our way around.
This is timber 1. It runs in a north-southerly direction. It underlies timber 8, and it runs parallel with timber 9. This one's pretty interesting because it's a pretty nice piece that's intact, and it extends underneath the trench wall, so we're not sure exactly how far it goes to. And then
it's a nice long and very straight piece.
Yes.
I'd be very surprised if it hasn't been worked, planked off, excess branches chopped off.
Yes.
It is a nice long plank of wood, which is really quite nice to see.
It kind of tapers off at this end, so we're not sure if it's a cut or just natural rotting away. And as we dig it down, we may discover that it actually extends further. And then over here, we have timber number 2, which is very interesting. This one looks like it has a groove in the middle, which is probably natural. And then it starts to curve, and then we have this very interesting cut right here that was not made by any of our tools during the excavation process. So we fairly certain it was not done recently, which leads us to believe that it's prehistoric. And then this continues. This might be the end of it, but there's a piece that extends here, which may actually be the wood. It's just over time compressed and kind of fallen away, and then it extends out that way.
So that mark looks like an axe cut.
Yes.
And I hazard a guess it's probably a bronze axe, not a flint axe, because of the relatively clean cut that it is. I would be expecting a bit more of an irregular cut if it was chopped into with a flint axe. So do these ones?
Yes.
We've got a couple of pieces down in the corner here.
4 and 5.
Timber pieces 4 and 5. It's a little bit unclean because we've been planning in here. Let's pull some of this back. But this piece may possibly join up with 4, may join up with 5, which runs into each in a different section. But 4 may well also be a completely different piece of wood that has been felled. I don't know if you can see from where you are, but the wood is in a V shape at this end, which is a traditional way of chopping down a tree. You have one cut on one side which is designed to direct the tree, and then you remove the material from behind it, and that releases the tree to fall in the direction of the original cut. There is evidence that there are possible tool marks in it. In fact, there are fairly regular notches around where the cut is, which might imply that whatever tool has been used to cut it has notches in it. Obviously, a flint tool will have lots of little grooves in it because of the way it's been made. A bronze axe may well have a nick in the blade, which could give you a similar effect. So it's possible that one is part of a tree or branch that's been chopped off of or felled from a larger piece, and that we're seeing those tool marks in there.
We have I mean, probably relative if they're contemporary.
Yeah.
Bronze Age.
That one I'm slightly more inclined to say a stone tool,
Okay.
but just because that was cut, that's been chopped with a flint tool, a bronze tool doesn't mean that something in the same layer can't be worked with a flint tool. The Bronze Age isn't the age where they only used bronze.
Yes.
So flint continues to be a useful resource. Well, we keep talking about that they use it in microsurgery, I believe, robotic surgery these days.
Yes.
Obsidian anyway.
Obsidian for eye surgery.
Exactly. And the Romans, I think, used it for scalpels too. But I am by no means an expert on woodcuts. This is what we're seeing. We're also seeing lots of other pieces of round wood, not just these flat and larger pieces. In fact, down here, you see this piece still has its bark on it. That's just silver birch. It's nice to see. We do need to wet this down again quite soon, so we'll not take too long over this. We can get some more moisture in the trench. What's the next timber then, Becky? What's the next timber number? We've done 4 and 5. 6.
So 6 is over here. This very nice long piece that, well, not long, but it extends out. It was one of the first pieces that we actually came across because we started excavating at this end, working our way back. And this piece 7 looks like it's extending, and it continues over here and goes underneath of our sandy bank 11003, and almost kind of looks structural. It could just be how the timbers fell, if they just fell like this, or if it was a structure that fell. But we do have a little bit missing here. Not sure if it was probably not a cut, but it is missing. That's anything to add about that?
Not that one in particular.
Okay.
I think it looked more impressive than it is now when we first uncovered it. So a lot of these timbers are kind of deceiving because we've left them on little flints of peat, so some of them look quite substantial, whereas actually they're relatively thin pieces of timber.
Probably only extend about that.
Which is, I know, a problem that was had when the platform in 6 was being done. It looked like there was layers and layers and layers of wood, but you see a piece of wood in the peat, and you think it's all wood. You pick away the peat very carefully, and you're left with a very small piece of wood at the end.
Yes.
So try not to sculpt it too much, but these higher up pieces are going to be removed, and we'll continue to excavate down a bit further. You'll notice most of the ones that are sat on flints are at all sorts of angles, but underneath them, or at a slightly lower level, especially with this one. With number 1, number 2, 3, 4 and 5, they're all running on that north-south alignment. Admittedly, 2 is quite curved, so it's running on a couple of alignments. But this one, aligned parallel with that, roughly aligned, perfectly aligned. The ones coming in and out of the section if they're aligned. You can see a piece through here that's aligned. This piece is aligned, and these pieces are all underneath pieces of wood that are going in different directions. So there's a possibility there's something in that, possibly not. We're going to investigate it. As Becky said, some of those timbers are going underneath the sand bank. So although we have post holes and stake holes in this area down here, I mean, if the timbers are going underneath that, then obviously the timbers being deposited in the peat predate the post holes here. So not necessarily every single piece of wood in here is. Yes, I mean some of the higher up pieces could well be from any sort of structure that we've got underneath here, but certainly the ones that are aligned north-south, I think they're a little bit too low. They seem to be at the level that's going underneath our sandbank. Any other marks on any of the other pieces of wood? A lot of them appear not to have bark on. A lot of the pieces of roundwood do have bark on. Whether or not that's because these pieces have been planked or because the bark's rotted away, that's still to be seen.